All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ria Dark, and I am a radio host and producer of 2 weekly radio programs on our NPR station, 90.5 FM, U Inc. and U2. And I'm welcoming you today to the 2019 edition of U Inc. Live at Comfest. Welcome everybody. Woo! This is our third year in a row here. Last year we interviewed the always lovely Gabor Klein about the importance of activism. The year before that we interviewed Jim Coe about how important it is to be of service to your community. And some of our other live specials were from all around the country. We spoke to Milo Runkle, the founder of Mercy for Animals, in the deserts of Nevada, on stage at the Hair of the Dog in Black Rock City at Burning Man. We recorded a show amongst creatives at Art Basel, did some Shakti shakedowns at Brothers Drink Meadery here locally with modern high priestess Dawn Thompson, to the RV of the Florida Swamp Yeti parked on the street. We also interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger's good friend and Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Dr. Robert Goldstein, at the Arnold Sports Festival, and also the founder, Jim Lorimer, around mountains of pro athletic muscle, and finally taking off at a 10K, the longest road race in Seabus, with Eric Ruth, the co-founder of Columbus Running Company, and the transformative power of a sneaker. So today's show is about the transformative power of voice. How using your voice can really change your immediate world around you and create ripples outside of that. So this show is about emotional intelligence, and today's topic, well, the tool we're going to use today is voice. So we've also brought you partnerships in 2019 as official media partners with the Columbus Creative Industry Mixer and Tommy McClure, currently at its helm. We interviewed artists and designers who were showing their work during the event at 400 West Ridge Street, and we ran a compassion confessional. So people typically think of confessionals as places where you go and you confess to naughty things that you've done, and we actually had people confess to acts of compassion that they actually did or received in order to be a part of virtuous cycles. We also partnered with the Ohio Art League and interviewed their board at the Spring Jewelry Exhibition, and also interviewed Tyler Kahn, the curator of the Contemporary Museum of Art here in Columbus. So you can also hear a lot of these shows on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and iTunes. You can check us out at wcb.org or at 2rogues.com. That's number 2 and the word rogues, ROGUS.com. As I mentioned, after today's interview, my son Anthony is roving around here with a hoverboard, giving out t-shirts if you want to ask a question. Hopefully you will, because today's guest, I've chatted with her a whole of 5 minutes, and so far I am impressed. So if she can impress me in 5, I'm sure she's going to blow you away in 20. So this year at Comfest, we have the pleasure of doing a U Inc. Live with our very special guest here today. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Ria. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for volunteering.
Absolutely.
At the last second. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and we're going to kind of talk about some of the work that you do with holistic work, and you're also a rock star as well, and how you use your voice in 2 very divergent areas, or different areas, and how that you can exercise your voice in so many ways, and maybe tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. My name is Helen Yee, and I am the owner and founder of the American Institute of Alternative Medicine. And we actually have programs in acupuncture, massage therapy, and nursing on a holistic foundation. I know this is a shameful plug, isn't it? No, just kidding.
No, you're supposed to do that.
Okay,
good. If you didn't know what you told you to do.
Right. And as Ria said, I'm also in a all-female rock pop band. We played on Friday, and we've been together for 7 years. My store has been in existence for 28 years. And we also have a clinic where people can come in the public for treatment. So, yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell.
What's the name of your band?
We're called Wednesday Wine.
Wednesday Wine.
Yeah, that's the drinking wine, not the
okay.
H-I-M-E.
Did you play Comfest this year?
Yes, we did. We play every year, actually, since, 6 years. We've been together 7, and it's been amazing. So Comfest is one of our amazing highlights of, performing
Okay? And so, speaking of Comfest and performing, I kind of went over this with you a little bit. Many of us know that there were 2 bands that had to be canceled because if they were going to play, that the insurance company wasn't going to cover them. And one of the questions that I was going to ask was, you know, we talk about exercising our voice and standing up for our rights, but in this particular case, sometimes you have to pipe down or stand down in order for the greater good, right? So what are some of your thoughts around times where you have felt the need to exercise your voice, or conversely, where you felt the need not to?
Yeah, I was not aware of this.
Yeah. But just generally speaking,
Yeah.
not necessarily about
Okay,
this. Yeah.
Ria, I really truly believe that everyone in life experiences some form of contrast, and so it depends on what you do with that contrast and the conflicts that you experience. But, you know, even our Zen masters of our lifetime and past, we've all had the contrast in our lives. And so how do we keep aligned and centered with ourselves and our values and things like that without having to bring it off course? So the contrast works well because I think it helps people create more in some way and to make change. I mean, look at, you know, our government right now. I think a lot of people are finally coming through and being more, engaged in trying to make change for our government and the politics and so forth. So at any point, the voices that we put out there, it's going to resonate, whether with a whole of a society or community or even in our own families.
Right, because a lot of times I think people think that, what can I do, right? What can I do? I'm just one person, forget about it. But you can, and collectively, you create that wave. You talked about that you do work with, you know, holistic health. So what about when people are not well? How hard is it for them to find their voices, and is part of what you do help them rediscover their values so that they can find their voice and know why?
That's a great question, actually, because I believe that a lot of people, I'm a massage therapist as well, and what I see is that, you know, people did not get sick or ill overnight. There's always something, whether it's a trigger of stress or something that they hang on to, such as worries, anxieties, and those kind of negative emotions can play havoc on your physical apparatus. So what is important is that when, as a health practitioner, is for me to use my voice and connect with my patients or anyone that I'm working on so that I can get a better connection with them, because it is all about connection. So what we need to do is find the words, find the voice, find whatever it is where that little bit of connection is going to help them open up an avenue for their healing.
Okay, so tell us about maybe how one goes about doing that. And what does that look like in the real world? How does one do that? So people who are listening today and also on the show, what is a way that they can try to discover that? What is an exercise that they can do?
Sure. This might be cliche, but active listening. I mean, truly being in the present as someone is talking to you, because you know, you can feel it. If I'm working on someone, you know, and I actually get body work as well, I can tell if a practitioner or massage therapist is not in the room with me being present. And so that energy connection is also just very important, very vital. And so one of my suggestions is active listening, and really like listening, not just, you know, like I hear you.
Right, but like being attentive,
Yes.
having that empathy, looking at nonverbals, asking questions for clarification, listening some more. Active listening, all of those things are really important for active listening. And even in the seminars that I do, when I do teach active listening, I tell people to physically square off with an individual and just turn your body towards them, have your shoulders to be facing their shoulders, uncross your arms and your legs, and with just a gentle lean in and just listen. And one of the things that I have a hard time with, surprise, surprise, is not interrupting and wanting to steer the conversation, being that I interview people and being that I love talking, right? But what I
you're good at what you do.
Let's hope. But what I tell people to do is, if you have a problem with that, just sit back and listen. And when the person stops talking, let silence hang in the air. Not only will they keep talking, but they will eventually answer those questions that you were going to ask them anyway. And you can literally just sit back and relax and enjoy the conversation. And here's a little pro tip. How do you know when they're done? They'll actually do a slight nod of the head. That's when you know that they're done. So for active listening, that's what you want to try. As I mentioned earlier, this is my other son Josh. He's here. As I mentioned, he started his company Unbound with his buddy Matt. And Ben is also here. So they're going to put out their stuff. Feel free to take a look at their merchandise at any point in time. As I mentioned, they started it at 17. They're on the show. Their show airs July 6th, this coming Saturday at 2:30. You can actually hear the story behind these gentlemen on 90.5 FM or WCB.org. So they're going to have their stuff out. Okay, so active listening. So what about what you're doing with the music, right? So sometimes when we do get overwhelmed with negative emotions, we might want to use our voices in a healthy way to get it out. So do you do that through your music?
Yeah, and let me add that those are great points that you mentioned about how to connect and using your voice and communicating. But another vital one that I find really important is eye contact. So, but yeah, going back to your question though about the band, we do a lot of covers. We find that really connects people because music in itself is such an amazing communication and connection. We do a lot of classic rock, and so people love, going back into that era. But we're also seeing like younger generations connecting to a lot of the movement, folk music that used to stir up and keep people active, and whether it's political or community-wise and world-wise. So yeah.
So what do we do in situations where people might be overwhelmed and aren't able to find their true voice because they're overwhelmed with some kind of an addiction? Let's say food addiction, screen addiction, pornography, I said screens, gambling, shopping. What happens to people when they lose control like that? Because I don't think people understand addiction very well. It's a total brain chemistry change. And people who have an addiction to whatever that is don't see things the way that we do. So it's really hard to find your voice, to rediscover that. What are some ways that you help? Do you treat people with addiction?
Absolutely.
What are some ways that you help people kind of find that?
Yeah, so in traditional Chinese medicine, a lot of the modality of acupuncture and other kinds of energy balancing systems and disciplines will help a lot of people to break that addiction, because there's an imbalance in the energy, which is what's called life force energy, which is called qi. And so we try to balance that out in the bodies, whether it's an addiction to all those that you mentioned, but it's one of the things also that mainly that someone needs to and wants to quit, and they want to get well. Otherwise, it's all kind of,
And I think that's the most frustrating part for anyone who either who lives with someone or loves someone with an addiction. I think that's the hardest part. Is you're like, come on, snap out of it already. Can't you see the cost? But you really can't push that envelope, unfortunately, unless you have a secret that I don't know. Because if there is a way, please tell me.
Well, like I said, they have to want to take care of their issue. When they actually take the first step in coming to see a practitioner to help them, that's a really big step for them. And I think from there, if the practitioners can connect with them through voice and connection, that's where the magic happens, and they can then allow themselves to release any kind of conflicts and stresses that are blockages that are causing this imbalance in their body.
Right, because the addiction, was created as a coping mechanism. It was started as a coping mechanism, and that was the only one that they used. One other thing that you kind of talked about, people wanting to discover, to say that I want something to be different. And one way we can find our values and figure out if we are following our voice is an exercise that I do in some of my seminars. And you can do this at home too. You plot out your real wheel. You can do it as a pie chart, or you can just do it linearly if that's easier for you. And write out how you are actually spending 168 hours of a week, right? So how much time are you spending traveling to work, at work, taking care of chores, spending time with kids? What are you actually doing? And then I ask people then to chart and plot an ideal wheel. Now before you say to yourself, oh, that's easy, I'm gonna be on the beach with the corona, that's great, but eventually the money runs out and you're gonna be on the beach and there's a lot of mosquitoes on the beach at nighttime. If you've ever done that, it's tough. So it doesn't work long term. So you are guided by your values and your voice to determine how you want to spend your time. And so when people plot their real wheel versus their ideal wheel, that's when they can find out that discrepancy around what it is I say that I want to do versus what I'm actually doing. That's something that you can do very easily. And when you find that discrepancy in the time that you're spending expressing who you are versus how you're actually doing it, then you can create action statements and start to make those bit-by-bit changes that you talked about to get yourself to connect with your voice. What is it, sweetie?
That is like perfectly
my hand is
said,
getting
Ria.
tired.
I do believe there's a lot of leading edge thinking in this, and so if people, and anyone can connect to what she's saying, because this is where we do those paradigm shifts in our lives as individuals, as community, and so forth. But it's being able to identify what it is that you want to change, and then going about it with an active itinerary.
Right. It's important to get support too. Mm-hmm. I also have a formula that I use for stress to help people identify how they can manage their stress. So stress is equal to when the pressures in our lives are greater than the resources that we have available to us. So you either need to up your resources or change those pressures by either eliminating them or having a cognitive shift, changing how you feel and think about them. But you can't do it if you don't have enough resources, and then whether it's natural, friends and family, or artificial, like going to a service.
Sure, yeah, and it's also, we have control over our mind's thoughts, and so how much radio time we want to put into negative thinking. It is up to us if we do have control over what we think, and that's going to be able to make a major shift. It can be gradual, because you can't go from, anxiety and worries straight on to happy joy, unless you're taking drugs maybe, I don't know. So, but again, there's a way that you can start to slowly change your way of thinking.
Just finish it.
To help you, that's another facilitation
Finish it.
of how to get there on that path of wellness and on that path of all those things you mentioned.
Right. And so where can someone go to find your facility if they were interested in checking out some of the services that you offer?
Thank you. We are at the location 6685 Doubletree Avenue. It's right across the street from the Bush Budweiser plant. Yep. With the Twin Towers.
Yep.
So we are right on that corner, and we do have the best deal in town if you want to get a massage for like $30. Full body massage.
That's what
we also, yeah. And we also have a clinic for acupuncture for anyone that's never tried it. It's very, very affordable. So we would love to have you. And we've been there for 28 years. So
I want to say about acupuncture. My mom is here too, Hanam. I was writing an article for a state health journal, and my mom is the skeptic. And she had some pain, and she went and she visited an acupuncture doctor in Cleveland, right? Cleveland Clinic. And it worked, right, Mom? It did, yeah. And believe me, if my mom says it worked, it worked.
That's awesome.
Believe me.
Yeah, really good.
Anthony, did you find anyone? Anthony, did you find anyone who wants to ask a question?
Any questions? We're open.
Anthony, did you find anyone? Okay, have them come up. Okay, those of you who wanting to ask a question, come on up.
Come on.
Yeah, if it's a question for a guest, you can use mine, or if it's a question for me, you can use this. I happen to know this person. This is B. Schumann. She is in a band. She also performed on Friday. An amazing group that she was with, a music conservatory. And her daughter and my daughter are very good friends, and they're all here today. And thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's not exactly a specific question. I wondered if you could talk more about the idea of the real wheel and the ideal wheel.
Yeah.
If I could get more details about that.
Sure. So everyone has 168 hours available to them every week, right? Regardless of who you are. And so you want to really start to take into account how you're actually spending your time, and then plot out how you would like to be spending your time based on your values. If you value unstructured time with children and you realize in your real will you're shuffling back and forth with so many structured activities, the action statement there would be, we need to drop one of those structured activities and instead have unstructured time with our children. So finding the difference about how you actually spend your time, how you would like to, based on your values, what you value, can lead you into making some of those changes. And one of the big ones that happens is a lot of people realize that they're spending an extreme amount of time in front of the screen, whether it be a phone, a computer, a video game, a tablet, and most, I would say 80+% of the people that I speak to realize that they go down this rabbit hole of YouTube videos and it's 2 hours later and they haven't attended to their marriage, to their children, to their own self-care. And that becomes a really slippery slope, because that in and of itself is an addiction, because screens are dopaminergic, they're a digital drug. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much. Thank you.
Thank you, B. And Andy, give that woman a t-shirt. Thank you. Okay, we have another person here. Please introduce yourself, since I don't know you and I can't do this. Oh, B, what's the name of your group, please? B. Humana, Humana. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Welly Cleveland, and I might have two questions. Well, I actually have an answer for one question, but my main question is, we always sign petitions as a form of our voices. We're sending them to supposedly our leaders. And I am thinking that they're ignoring us. It's almost like the power there is not there anymore.
So, and I see you're getting emotional about it, and thank you so much. It's clear to me that this means a lot to you. Thank you so much, Ms. Cleveland, for sharing that. Thank you for comforting her. I appreciate it. A couple things about that. One thing that I think that there are organizations that do use those petitions. PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, do utilize that to levy changes in legislature. So there are some places that are authentic with that. But to answer your question, I think that we might be better off finding leaders who control our purchasing choices.
Sure.
Because only then will people listen. If we get a lot of people to boycott something or stop participating in something and it hits them in the wallet, that's when we're going to see change happen. That's when corporations will say, yes, I will follow this. Only with your wallet. We have to be very cognizant of the purchasing choices that we make. And I think that someone who's as passionate as you can be someone who can move large groups of people. At this point, I even think even better than government. Might even have more impact than government.
I always say there's nothing better than a well-placed board.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Ms. Cleveland. Thank you. We have another person. Anthony, please give Ms. Cleveland a t-shirt. We have another question? No, another question. Do you have another question? Was that just the one? Okay. You have another one? Come on back.
It wasn't a question, but it was a form of voice that I use.
Please.
I'm a hand percussionist, and I can have the worst day and go home and start drumming and be healed.
Thank you.
That's all I want to say.
Thank you. And that is great to know that your voice can have a healthy outlet. Choose those healthy outlets and be the best you ink that you can be. Elevate your emotional intelligence. Constantly see the world from a children's eyes and just rediscover it every day. Take care of your body. 30 minutes of movement a day. You don't have to exercise. Water, 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 water. And plant-based lifestyle. Not vegetarian, not vegan, that's a choice, but plant-based. 75% of what goes into your body needs to come from a plant. Whether it be a vegetable, a fruit, a bean, a nut, a seed, a flower. And that's it. If you do those 3 things, you're good to go, promise.
And buy local.
Yes, buy local. Thank you so much for coming out to Ewing today. We really enjoyed that.
I enjoyed it too.
Thank you.
Do your quote.
And thank you everyone for joining us here today. And thanks again to Jerome
quote.
from Buffet Productions and the crew here at Comfest. And for my little girl Lula, who is holding the camera also, and my son Anthony who was out there. And thank you everyone. Have a great Comfest. Ria Dark. See you next year.